Just FYI for everyone, the Slack GitHub account hack blog post is now live.
All right.
Rick, I'll pay attention
Webinar
to
and the webinar is live.
Yeah.
Can I say the first?
Everything's going live.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
welcome all. Where y'all? Let us know where you're dialing in from. I'll pay attention.
Webinar and the webinar is live.
Yeah.
Can I say the first?
Everything's going live.
Huh, I see some echo. Welcome, everyone. Let us just a minute while everybody's connecting.
All right, I see us live on LinkedIn and we got the participants streaming in here. But Stefan, can you do the intro? Just because for some reason I get the echo from the restream.
I know, absolutely, absolutely. So thanks everyone for joining. Happy to be here. Happy New Year. This is a good start for 2023. And we're having this webinar today to talk about two things. First, addressing CISO priorities in 2023. So like we'll talk a few things like what is in the agenda for the CISOs and security teams across different categories, frankly, like tech companies, e-commerce, fintech, banks, and every other company that we talked in December about what is on their play this year. But we also will talk about Wallarm and our offering. So like how we can basically help to address all of those challenges and trends. I'm happy to be here with Rick, who is the VP of Demand Gen at Wallarm. He's helping us during this webinar. We also have Tim Ebbers, who is the field CTO at Wallarm. So this is the guy probably you see a lot if you're already a customer of Wallarm while helping with the implementation and deployment. My name is Stepan. I'm one of the co-founders of Wallarm, so I will be talking a lot today. and hopefully you will help me to show demos and make it more interactive. Also, let's keep it interactive as an idea. So like if you have any questions, feel free to shoot right away. We definitely will have a Q&A session at the very end of the webinar. But like if we see some good questions that is good to address right away, maybe like to give some clarity of something we are talking about, don't be shy, just send it over right away, and we'll try to talk about it. Let me switch to the next slide, and just to give you a 30 seconds overview of what a Wallarm is. Like, and I see a list of the people on the webinar already, and like I recognize a few names, so thanks for joining our dear customers. So like that's very important for us when the partners and the customers are joining. But for all of you who don't know what is Wallarm, we do the complete application and API protection. So our mission and our commitment is to make sure that your apps, APIs, microservices are protected against any kind of threats, regardless of where they are running. It can be multi-cloud, cloud, Kubernetes environment. So like our goal is to make sure that they are protected, they're not abused, and they are safe, and the customer base you have is also safe. One of the exercises we typically do at the end of the year, preparing for the customer advisory boards, we made a survey and talked with the security leaders across different categories. And I mentioned a few of them, like manufacturing, different tech companies, retail, fintech, finance, insurance, gaming, and frankly, a lot of others. And we asked questions, the security leaders, security managers, VPs, like, what's in your agenda next week? Like, what are the key challenges? And some of the answers are not surprising, like this is something we expect to see, but sometimes the answers are mind-blowing, and like, say, wow, actually we didn't even think that that would a big thing, but funny enough, we already have a solution for you. So what we try to do during this webinar is to compile everything in a few buckets, basically, and talk about the key three directions for pretty much every security leader, regardless of the category, frankly, to think about this here. And like, we obviously will talk about how to support the business strategy and digital transformation, because that's such an important thing with everybody's going on with the tech companies. Like, every company now is a tech company. Everybody's not only producing apps and APIs, but also like using more and more tools, including no-code tools, which bring more challenges. The second bucket would be managing risks, right? So like, it's the essence of what we're all doing here, how to make sure that we're managing risk, we measure risk, we address all the challenges and issues. So we'll talk more about how to make it in the most effective way in 2023. Obviously, since we're a product security company, we primarily will talk about product security. We won't talk about the ransomware, endpoint protection. We'll primarily talk about the product security and everything related, but this is one of the key things this year anyway. And the third bucket is increasing ROI. So like, how to do more, get better results by doing less. Like, everybody's dreaming about this, right? So we have some practical tips, like how you can make it possible. So with that, I don't know, Tim, if you have anything to add. If no, I'll suggest to start.
No, I don't think anything to add here. I think as we go through, I'll color some commentary.
Yeah, that's awesome. Please help me. Let me jump right into the theme number one, supporting business strategy. So we talk a lot with the tech companies, and some of the companies that we're talking with are not tech companies, but you can see this. It's like, everybody's now considering themselves as a tech company. And when we're talking with the customers, everybody's going this transformation. Like, a lot of companies are saying, hey, we're not only in the cloud now, we're moving to the multi-cloud. And like 2 years ago, it was a surprise. Frankly, it was not a usual thing. Now, most of the customers we're talking with have at least 2 clouds. And there is a research by KNC that multi-cloud approach is already used by the large enterprises, like 94% of the cases. So like, we see this a lot. And the way we see it right now is that one of the clouds is used as the primary cloud, like let's say it's Amazon, like Google Cloud and Azure are used as the secondary clouds. But we see more and more that the customers are not only trying to use those multiple cloud environments, but also try to use all of them as a primary clouds, just in case they need to switch from one to another. And this is definitely a trend. Something that is very related is the Kubernetes. So Kubernetes is a thing. Yes, it's hard to use it, but now we see that like, it's getting more simplified. We have more and more people who can do that. And quite frankly, among the customers we're talking with right now, like, it's probably a split of 50-50. Like half of the customers are already using Kubernetes, and the other half is planning to implement it. So like, it's already there. GraphQL, speaking of the applications and APIs, there's a lot of transformation about how the APIs are built and managed. So like, GraphQL is a big thing. 3 years ago, we thought it's a niche thing, and we implemented support for the GraphQL primarily for the big tech companies because they were like rushing to start using something new. Now we see that like, GraphQL is getting more and more commodity, and Gartner is saying by 2025 it would be a new thing. So while working on your security agenda, tooling and practices, just make sure that you're taking into consideration all those trends. Like, it's not only enough to protect one cloud. Like, it's all about the spectrum of clouds. It's not enough if your security tooling only can protect REST APIs. GraphQL is real, is here, like more and more customers are using it. So one of the things I want to highlight here, because like, at least 2 CISOs that we talked in December mentioned this, is a no-code or low-code. We are dumping massive amount of data into the no-code or low-code solutions, are trying to gain this integrations, trying to get this very simple application that can help us to be more efficient. But quite frankly, in many cases, our security controls are not there. Nobody's taking care of the API keys, and a couple of other problems there. So like that's a huge thing this year as well, and it would be of a lot of CISOs. So our approach here and our commitment here was always to be agnostic to what the customers are doing. So like Wallarm is committed to protect applications and APIs and microservices and serverless workloads, regardless of where they are running. It can be private data center, multi-cloud environment, it can be Kubernetes, wherever they are running, we're just committed that we can support it. And it's not really important for us if you're using legacy apps or it's a new fancy tech, because we're committed that we would be agnostic and we can protect pretty much everything. So this completeness is our mission and approach. Let me jump here into the theme 2, which is managing risk. So this year is interesting. If you follow the news, like in December, in November, and like even earlier this year, you would be you're probably mind-blowing, like how many data breaches, how many leakages, how many incidents were reported publicly by the companies. Most of them are related to the APIs and product security. So all of those things that we saw last year, vulnerabilities in the web apps, vulnerabilities in the APIs, different kind of problems with the bots, vulnerabilities in the homegrown apps, but also in the third party, supply chain risks. So everything would be even more this year. So quite frankly, you can double down on pretty much everything. Vulnerability in the apps, issues in the APIs, different kind of API abuse, different kind of new vulnerabilities that are related to the cloud environments, Kubernetes, no code and low code issues. So like the attackers would double down on most of them because it's apparently so easy to find them and exploit, even in the most known companies in the world, with a very serious budgets, with a very confident and the qualified security teams. We see this like the well-known companies, like probably every one of us using this, like it's published, hey, we have a leakage here, we have a leakage there. The attacker got an access to the source code. The story from the Slack today the API keys for the customers are leaked in some kind of anonymous Twitter accounts. So there were so many of those things, and there will be more and more of them. And in order to be ready, you should have proper security controls for sure. This is the approach we have, is to make sure that you actually have in control both environment that is in your direct control, so to say, where you can manage, fix, remediate issues, but also keeping track on something that is out of your control, like the GitHub repositories that are not company repositories, let's say, or the solutions and the partners that are operating their own apps and APIs that can be vulnerable. So let's start on the left side. We just want to make sure that if you have any issues with the applications and the APIs, if you're dealing with the bots, scrappers, if you're using a lot of third-party libraries like Log4j, and like apparently everybody's using it, right? So like it's not a question, it's just like everybody's using that. Or you're dealing with some kind of cloud misconfigurations. We just make sure that like you have proper security controls for detection, remediation, and protection in place. And what we did last 6 months is also like put a lot of emphasis on like how to give you remediation tools to something that is out of your control. When somebody's, like by mistake is leaking the API key to the Git repository, and like this is just a developer of your company, or maybe this API keys is leaked by the partner developer and it's just like exposed to everyone in the world, like how to deal with this and how to remediate those things. We'll talk about this more while showing demo, but our commitment is basically to make sure that you have security controls in the environment that is in your control, but also in the environment that is out of your control. And that's one of the important things we want to emphasize this year. Managing the attack surface, the topic that is on our radar for years. I know, like, we talked this about like 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and probably 10 years ago. Maybe not naming it in the same way, but it was pretty much always on our agenda. And now it's getting even more fun. So like, look at the numbers, like 1.7 billion active APIs. This is prediction by Postman. 1.7 billion would be available by 2030. So it's just like, it's a mind-blowing picture. But what's more mind-blowing is that, like, most of the APIs you see is only tip of the iceberg, because like APIs that typically are public APIs, but there is also like a huge subset of the partner APIs. And it's also a huge number of APIs that are not exposed, or we think they're not exposed, but they are exposed. So it's just basically when we're talking about the APIs, but quite frankly, not only APIs, but also the apps, we're basically thinking about like 3 buckets: public APIs, private APIs, and partner APIs. What's more fascinating is that by 2025, so it's really here already, and we see this all the time, only half of the APIs would be managed. So like, what does it mean? You're investing, your engineering, your IT is investing into the API management software. It can be APG, for instance. And you assume, okay, like, we have the APG, so like everybody in the company would use our, let's say, API management layer to basically host all of the APIs, apply all the policies, like have the governance in place. But in reality, there are a lot of developers that just like publish something in the cloud environment. They don't like the API management restrictions they have, or they have their own agenda and they think that they like the way they publish and operate the APIs is better to run faster. Once again, like, everybody wants to run faster, right? So like, and release more with less effort. So we're not as surprised that the number of the unmanaged APIs that are not using any API management is growing as fast as never before. And they're, quite frankly, is out of control already. So like, we see it across our customer base. We see it like while talking with the CISOs, and this data from the Gartner, the number is mind-blowing, by the way. I still can't believe it, but this is what Gartner is saying, like half of the APIs wouldn't be managed by your API management software by 2025. So what does it mean? It means that you can think about the access controls, you can think about the authorization, authentication, best practices, you can think about how to make sure that everything is documented in the API management, but in reality, like half of your engineering team would use something differently. And that's basically the best thing that can happen for the bad guys, is just when you have a variety of the APIs, nobody actually make an inventory of them, nobody's know what's up and running, nobody's tracking changes. It's not a surprise that eventually you have all the shadow APIs that are deprecated or supposed to be deprecated, but they're still exposed. We have some legacy APIs, and that's a big problem that we will tackle this year. We are pretty sure about that. When we talk about the product security strategy and the API security strategy, since it was on the agenda of so many security leaders last year, we always started with the idea of the importance of a discovery, like having up-to-date inventory of all the APIs. It's basically a very simple concept, like 3 questions. Where are my assets? Like how to have the full list, full inventory of all the apps and APIs. What are those assets? And by what I mean, like, what kind of data they handle? What APIs actually track sensitive data? Which of them track financial data or some other PIIs? Make a quick experiment, like come to your security leader right now, and then come to your engineering leader, like CTO or VP of engineering, and ask a very simple question. Say, how many APIs do you have? Like, how many APIs do you think we have? I don't think you will get an answer. You can ask like, how many API endpoints you have, and also like then ask how many of them operate with the sensitive data, and they should be operated with the compliance in mind. I'm pretty sure if you don't have any solution in place for that, there would be no clear answer for that. And even if somebody will go to the API management and we'll show you the inventory there, it's very likely that it's not full, and that's a lot of part of it. So that's why the discovery is important. So we typically talk about this as a posture management, because it's, from one hand, the idea and the challenge of discovery, all the API endpoints that are actually used are not used by the actual customers, but also trying to identify different kind of issues related to that, lack of authentication, any open vulnerabilities, misconfiguration. We'll talk more about like how to prioritize security efforts based on this data, but let's stop here by the discovery. Discovery is very important. One of the value props that Wallarm can give you is not only the full inventory, it's not only tracking of the changes, but also the automated discovery of all the PII data, and something that you need to think about. Tim will show this during the demo later on. Let me switch here. Let me actually check the questions if we have any. I don't really have anything here so far. So guys, once again, let's keep it interactive. So feel free to send any clarifying questions, and we're happy to talk more about that. And Rika, I'm not following the LinkedIn, so like if there's anything there, let's also talk about that. Next topic here is protecting user accounts. So to what I already mentioned, 2022 was a fascinating year in the number of data breaches across the globe, frankly. It was happening in the US and Europe, in Latin America and Asia. So I don't think any region, and Australia, obviously, I don't think any region was actually out of it. Quite frankly, I've been in the space for a while. I've never seen anything like that. So it seems that 2023 would be even worse. So like even more compromised user accounts, and all this dumps of the username, passwords, and also other identifiable information will lead more into the credential stuff and attacks. So like once you see the breach in one resource, we inevitably see this spike in the attacks of different kind of credential stuffing across our customer base. I think e-commerce and fintech is mostly impacted by that. So we just like see the direct correlation. Like if any data breach is happening at the, there is a leakage of the username and password somewhere on the hacking forum, we immediately see the spike of the account takeover, brute force, and other stuff like that. So this year, it will be even more of it. So there are a lot of leaked secrets, a lot of leaked credentials, a lot of leaked databases. So it was pretty obvious for us. So as I mentioned, one of the key directions for us during the last 6 months was to make sure that we are not only thinking about the applications and protection of the applications and APIs, but really think about also protecting the users of those applications. So that's why in this new year, we're coming with a very robust account takeover protection that can basically mitigate a lot of credential stuff and efforts. We released recently the identification of the weak JWT tokens. We can automatically identify issues related to the authentication and the authorization. And obviously, as I mentioned, we're also releasing in early access this week the proactive API leak detection. So let me talk a little bit more about that, and then we'll show a demo for you. Our API secret leaks and other leaks is something that you can find pretty much everywhere right now. So just did this while working on the slides for today. I just went to the Google News and put the API leak as a search term, and I instantaneously had probably 8 articles only during yesterday. So I added a few screenshots, not everything from the yesterday though, but this is a very big problem that everybody's addressing right now. API leaks are happening all the time. Like the good example of the API leak that we see across the board is developers are not using the vault or some other safe storage for the secrets. they have the secrets right in the source code, and the source code is uploaded to the public repository. So not a surprise, these APIs keys are exposed to pretty much everyone. And this is just like one of the examples of it. So we see this happening all over the place. And unfortunately, we had a few examples recently that we know from the news when the companies were breached because of it. And it's such a sad story because you can have a perfect controls in your company. You can have all the security tooling, like all the source code will be safe. There will be everything in the right shape, frankly, but there will be one leakage of the API key that one of your developers did somewhere, maybe not even in the company repository, and the whole thing just breaks down. So that's why one of the key ideas that we started working on is basically how to make sure that we can find those API leakage from the companies, but also not only find, but remediate of them. So as an early access, we have this proactive API leaks remediation right now. And it does three things. First of all, it can scan public sources for leaks of API secrets and other secrets. It can be credentials, it can be credential databases. We will automatically crawl a number of the sources, and it's a very good number of the sources. I will try to find everything we can and alert customers. That's good, but we decided it's not enough. What if we can also automatically remediate those risks? Because if we know that those keys are leaked, if we know that those user accounts are compromised already, we can block them. Like it typically takes time to revoke the keys. If it's up to the customer, sometimes it's hard because like they maybe not even know how to do that. So we basically can remediate some of those attacks right with the Wallarm by saying, hey, if we see the API request with this key used, make sure it's blocked. And we can remediate a lot of those things automatically. Another example here, if we see that the credentials that are leaked are used, we also can remediate it by setting up the necessary triggers. So it's automated remediation. It's not only alert, but also something that can put a very actionable alert in place. And the third thing is also important because you want to see what's happening, like what would happen if there would be no control in place. So that's why we also track when those leaked secrets and credentials are used. So we can use it for investigations. You can use it to have a better picture of what's going on and like what was the intention by some of the bad guys, but also can give you give you a good idea of the ROI of this thing. Like if you see, okay, those credentials are used and leaked now, and if there would be no control, we would have this user accounts compromised. So like there's a good ROI and like basically the indication of how it can be used. And I think like one of the important things that pretty much everybody mentioned while talking about this here are in this market, and we'll talk more about this, and the recession not only the news and the fancy podcasts, but also like in the streets, people talking about there will be a lot of effort to make sure that the TCOs are lowered, the ROI is justified. So like everybody will start thinking about how to make the whole program effective and how to make sure that it's visible, because nobody wants to put money right now when we are not sure about the effectiveness of this or that program, especially CFOs. So be prepared for that. This is just a screenshot. I don't want to stop a lot on that. With some of the examples of the leakage that can be detected, including some leakage at the GitHub repository. So we will have a demo soon, and the team will go through this with all the details. I think this is actually a good time to pause for a second and give it to you, team, because we have some of the recommendations from Forrester for the next year about the most necessary priorities. But I think it's good to talk about that after the demo. So at this, I will stop sharing and we'll give it to you.
Great, thanks, Stepan. So we'd like to give you an overview of the product and how our product fits into those three major themes. As we've been talking about, visibility, detecting and protecting, and responding all fit in well with our three major themes today. So we're going to start with visibility. If you can't see it, you can't protect it. And if you can't see it, you can't know that something's gone wrong. So the big thing that we want to talk about first is our front end dashboard. This gives you a view into everything that we're seeing across your environment, whether that's in a single cloud, whether that's multi-cloud. So again, one tool, many clouds, many implementations, whether you're hybrid, multi-cloud, whether you're in multiple clouds, whatever the case, we can see that traffic through our filtering nodes that is installed in each of your locations, consolidate them all into one tool. So you don't have to have a tool per cloud. If you look across the clouds, they all have WAFs that you can purchase, but then you're managing all of them differently. So this is one place where you can go have the same view across all of your clouds. So in this, you'll see our API discovery. You know what we have, so that's important, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The threat prevention, so this will tell you how many attacks that you're getting, and then how many incidents. And to us, an incident is when an attacker is attacking something that has a vulnerability. And so instead of having to look at 163,000 attacks a day, you can look at the 10 most important ones. So again, if you look at total cost of ownership, where should I be spending my time? We try to help you understand where you should be spending your time, which is where the attacks are occurring to vulnerable assets that we may be protecting, but that you need to make sure that we remediate. And then always fun to watch where the attacks are coming from. In our demo environment, we've got things all over the place, mostly though in the US. The types of attacks, what kind they are, as well as the CVE that comes with it. So the CVEs are fun. It will actually show you what it is and then what the vectors are right in one screen so that you don't have to go to multiple places to see those things. And then the different protocols and authentication attacks. So GraphQL, as we talked about, is definitely coming on strong. GraphQL is hard. How do you protect against a SQL injection in a SQL language? It's a very interesting conversation, and it's something that we brought out, and we can look for those attacks inside of your GraphQL language and block those attacks. It's been fun to learn a lot about GraphQL in the last couple of months of being here, and how we protect against those. And then gRPC, binary language from Google, mostly an internal language, but again, we aren't just an external WAF. We love to be both internal and external. And then the vulnerability scanner that we'll get to in a second, but this is one of the scanners that we have that's looking for vulnerabilities. And someone asked the question about shadow APIs. This scanner will actually look across your environment for those shadow APIs, those endpoints that you may not have known about, so that you can start looking at them and seeing if it's something that you should put Wallarm in front of. And that's something we'll look at here in a second. So we'll start with the API discovery. So we'll start with discovery, then we'll look at the threats, and then we'll end protection and move on from there to respond, integrations, and triggers. So here you'll see our endpoints, the different classifications of data, and this is really important, and we'll dig into this in a second, but we know what kind of data is being passed in your API so that we can categorize them and then put risk assessments on them, how important they are or non-important they are, and where you should be spending your time looking at the different vulnerabilities against those APIs. So we've got 159 APIs in our demo environment, 16 that's changed in the last 7 days. So let's dig in on these and see what we see. So here is a view of all of the different APIs that we see. This is really driving the traffic inline. or out of band. As we're seeing the traffic come through our product, we'll start creating these endpoints. And then in these endpoints, we'll actually show you what parameters that we're seeing. And then we'll if we see sensitive data, we will tell you where we're seeing those sensitive data and then what types of data they are. And then you'll also get a risk score. This risk score is really designed to help you understand what are the most important things in your environment. If a new API comes in and it has PCI data, you're going to want to know about that and make sure that the correct things are happening with that endpoint and it's in a secure location. So this is really just another set of eyes watching the traffic and watching the parameters and that we're seeing going in and out of those APIs. And then if you're looking at the risk score, we'll tell you why we scored it what we did. And then later on, we'll show you how to actually change those settings to be able to be customized so you can create your own risk scores rather than just use ours. And then with these APIs, you'll see that we have a number of hits. These are attacks at those different APIs. So we've got a risk score and then a number of attacks to those risk scores. So this particular risk score is high as an 8. It's got 350 attacks on it. So let's go view that one. I just clicked on it and we clicked through to it. So we have some attacks in the last week, last 2 weeks, last week. So this one is a malicious card number. So they're using a card number and trying to get your Etsy hosts out. So we've just now gone from an API all the way through to an attack. So you can see that full end to end and see what's happening with your different attacks. So this is a great example of what we're seeing maliciously in this particular payload. So the next thing that we'll look at in terms of visibility is our scanner. This scanner, you can put in the domains that you have and also subdomains. So you'll see here, we'll have a star here. So it'll go and pull all the domains out of DNS that are set up for this particular DNS entry. And then it'll start scanning and then it'll tell you where your endpoints are, what traffic it has, so that you understand your attack surface. This is really where your unmanaged APIs will come into play. So you'll see endpoints that you're not familiar with on ports that you may not be familiar with in clouds that you may not be familiar with to really drive and understand your attack surface and understand what you need to go look at. Many times you'll have a domain that goes out to a third party and you won't know that it exists or what exists there. And this scanner will help you just be another set of eyes into those, both your own internal attack surface, but even the greater third-party attack surface. Okay, and then we'll jump here because it's a good segue into vulnerabilities. So these scanners will actually start doing malicious attacks against your endpoints if you want them to. And these vulnerabilities will come in into our vulnerability section. So you'll know the domains and then the vulnerabilities that are attached to those domains. This is great for third parties. It'll actually make sure that everything is staying up to date with your third parties as well. And so this one you'll see we've got, this is the Log4j RCEs that are happening. You can click on it and you'll see everything about that, that vulnerability, and even to the point of how do you simulate that vulnerability. And then you'll see where you're seeing attacks for that vulnerability. So we'll click on the related incidents. And so here you'll see we have a hit against this Java app demo that we know is vulnerable, which is why it's out here, because it's great for our demo. And you'll see the vulnerability here tied to that incident. And so this is a full end-to-end view of, I've got a vulnerability, and then here are all the attacks that are associated with that vulnerability. And while we're here, let's talk about threat prevention. So both API and application, legacy application, web application protection in one product. So from here, we can really do lots of different things. So here is the 234,000 hits and 623 unique attacks. Right off the bat here, you can see Ebola, broken object level authorization. This is a popular one. This is one that's a little difficult to understand, but I'll do my best to explain it. So you've got one user that you log in at, and then the bad guys can take that one user's authentication and then see and enumerate on an endpoint and try to find other users' authorization. So we're seeing that happening here, and then we'll actually create an attack type to actually block these IPs so that they don't continue to do that. API abuse, you'll see here. We'll show you the IP list here in a minute, where these blocks will go if they get bad enough. So here you'll see API abuse. These look like just a bot that's doing looking for sensitive information. We're putting these on the deny list. We've got 404s, but we're still going to put them on the deny list because they look like bots. And I'll show you that why we think it's a bot here in a minute. There's more details behind that in a second here. So the other thing I want to show you is the GraphQL. This one's a fun one to show. Didn't have any today. Had some last week. So in this one, you can see here that there's a post to a JSON document. And then there's some variables in here. And as you look at the payload, you can see the selects in the content. So we're saying that this is a malicious SQL injection inside of a GraphQL endpoint, which has kind of been interesting to learn about. And if you're doing GraphQL and you don't have, and you know, or you haven't looked into, can my WAP or my API security protect me against my GraphQL, I would suggest that you ask that question. This is a great, especially as you're starting to bring online new GraphQL endpoints. From a security CISO standpoint, this is a place where people can get lots of data very quickly because it's literally a SQL endpoints where the front-end applications can be pulling data out. So this is a great place to make sure that you have some protection in order to rest a little easier at night. And then let's talk a little bit about the IP lists before we go into our new feature, API leaks. So our IP lists are lists of IPs. We've got three lists: the allow list, the deny list, and then the gray list. You'll see here that we've got Ebola on our deny list, which means take that IP and don't bring it back, or don't allow it in. We can put time minutes on it. So these are expiring here in a couple minutes. And then here you'll see a bot. These bots, if you click on them, this one in particular, I've got a profile that's triggered that's being put on the deny list. The user agent is SQL map. It's doing 24 requests per second, 121 requests per session. And so based on this, we believe that this is an attack from an API. So great details here. We've got some new stuff coming out that I'm excited about, new ways to visualize this data that you'll be impressed about, but more to come on that one later. And then let's look at API leaks, which is really exciting for me. API leaks is another one of those things that it's another set of eyes. You can't know what everyone is doing all the time. And even people with the best intentions can forget. I do it all the time. My kids would tell you that I forget their names most of the days. So this is a great way to have another set of eyes looking at your external Postmans or torrents or GitHub or repos, looking for people that are accidentally putting API tokens in a public place. And so here you'll see, pardon me, excuse me. Here you'll see our new API leaks. This is early access. We're pretty excited about this for two reasons. Number one is we can do some detection here. So we can detect, so let's say, for instance, 139,000 passwords were tried in the environment. And we want to make sure that we have a brute force trigger, which we can configure here. And it'll bring up our brute force trigger, which we'll talk about here in a second. But this will then allow you to do something to those types of attacks, which is really great, so that you can see that you've got somebody hitting you that's using a leaked email password database. Another great one here is Postman. I mean, how many of us love Postman? So this one had private API specs available at a public Postman collection. That's pretty easy to do. You make that choice at the beginning, and sometimes you forget that you have it in a public place instead of a private place, or you've got multiple, some public, some private, and forget which one you put it in. So this is very much happens and happens more than you would think, believe it or not. And then here's an API link that has been secrets that have been leaked. I actually have this one up right here. And so you'll see that this is a leaked API key in GitHub. And so what's great about the API leaks is not only can we identify that there's a problem, but we can also fix it, right? So that goes into the protection. Knowing that you have a problem, knowing that you have an API leaked is just half the problem. But if you can't identify who's using it and where it's coming in, we have these list of rules that we can actually add to look for those regex key, or those those tokens, those API keys, and then block those any request coming in, or using a trigger, throw up an event that will tell you who's using that particular API key and where. So really great visibility, and that jumps right into our integrations. So we've got many integrations. We've got email, we've got task management systems, Opsgenie, PagerDuty, scenes and SOARs, log management, data collectors, and then a webhook. We've got workflows to push data into Jira, into Service Desk. All of that is doable because this is not going to be your main dashboard for across your environment, right? We're not collecting your logs of all the systems. There's a lot of data that we aren't seeing, but the data that we are seeing is very, very important. And so being able to push this into a place, a SIEM, or a centralized location where the customer can see this is really important to us, because the more data that you have that's visible, the more educated decisions you can make quicker. So this is a great place to go and set up those integrations. While I'm in here, we can talk about API discovery. So here's where we can actually change your risk scoring. You can turn things off, turn things on, and then that'll change the shape of your radar here. It's fun to play around with and see what it looks like. And then last but not least is our triggers. And so you'll see we've got a ton of triggers. We've got events to all sorts of places. These are very flexible and easy to create triggers using if-then statements, number of different attacks. Deny listed IP, for instance, is one of them. If it's a deny listed IP, then send it to Opsgenie, send it to a Slack notification so you know that it was blocked. So okay, whew, that was a lot of stuff in a little bit of time. Stepan, did I miss anything? But can I take a breath now? Whew.
Oh yeah, that was an amazing demo. Thank you so much. I think we covered pretty much everything, but let me highlight a few things, getting back to the presentation. And obviously, this is a quick walk through the product, and like we can't cover all the use cases, and we can't cover about your specific workflow and your specific challenge. So if you think that this might be a solution for something that you're dealing with in 2023, just shoot us a note, and we're happy to jump on the call and talk about your specific use case here. Let me open my browser and tell me if you can see it.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, that's awesome. So we're just right before we move to the demo, I mentioned that the Forrester has its Playing Guide 2023 about security and risk, and there are different buckets there, which are called invest, stop invest, and something else. So we're interesting enough, like in the investing area, they have a few things that are very relative to a Wallarm. They recommend to invest both in the API security bot management for a variety of the reasons. You can download this report for the Forrester. We talked a lot about the API security today. We didn't talk about the bot management, but that would be a huge thing in 2023. And by bots, I not only mean the bots that are scrappers for your web applications, but the bots that are issued for the APIs. Protecting APIs against bots is actually a very challenging thing to do. So like for all of you who are already managing this, you know that's hard because APIs are intentionally developed to be used by bots, by the other software in many cases. So it's not that easy to identify the malicious behavior and the behavior that is not human. So that's why the API abuse challenge is so challenging. So we have a lot of recent updates regarding the API abuse prevention, and there will be a lot of more in 2023. So happy to chat with pretty much everyone who is dealing with this kind of bots, scrappers, scalpers, different kind of financial stuff and attacks, and other things. I know that we're running out of time, so like it's time to talk about the theme 3, increasing ROI, how to do more with less. That's an interesting topic. So that's one of the ideas we put into pretty much every feature when we are starting working on. Let me start from another angle first. This is the year of recession. We see all these layoffs that are happening in the most prominent tech companies. I live in San Francisco, so like it's hard to ignore that some of the largest and most successful SaaS companies are laying off thousands of people, and this would be a trend for sure across the board in 2023. So the question that every security leader will be asking, or maybe would be asked by CE4 and the board, is not maybe about reducing the budget, but at least about staying at the same budget level. So what would be the solution to justify the cost or optimize the cost? So I think this is a great chance to deal with another challenge, which is called tool sprawl. We just all have a lot of tools, and like in many cases, we don't need all of them. So this is just like some interesting stats that our team found. Organizations use on average 11 web application and API security tools. And we're talking about the mid-size and large enterprises here. And the total cost of it, only for licenses, is $2.6 million each year. So that's a fascinating number. Like, do we really need all those 11 tools? Maybe yes, but like in many cases, we don't really need it. And I don't think anybody would be surprised if I would say, in many cases, some of those tools are not even used. They're not even deployed. They're not even the part of the unified workflow. They may be hated by the team. So I think that's a huge improvement, not only on the cost of the licenses, but also on the cost of the learning, education, training, integration. That's using like multiple tools, like it's a lot of hassle. And that's really, really hard. And if you want even more fascinating number, the Optiv CEO I'm pretty sure like all the security people in the US knows that Optiv is one of the largest security resellers and partners. For everybody else, I think that would be an important comment. Optiv CEO is saying that they see between 75 and 130 tools for the mid and large enterprises. So that's a fascinating number. It has complexity, it has cost, and this can be optimized. So we see across our customer base that we are doing exactly the same. We're exactly the thing that can basically help you here, because we're helping you to unify a couple of the products into the one platform and not buying cloud, web, or WAF, and then buying additionally API security, and then buying additionally API security testing tools, and then buying additionally some kind of API discovery. Like, we're giving you this complete platform that basically includes all those products and modules for different kind of use cases, starting from protecting of the web apps, continue with the API discovery, continue with the API testing. So it comes as one unified platform that unifies these products and modules, and they are integrated out of the box. You don't need to have your team educated on the multiple products. It's one product, one platform that can be universally integrated into your workflows. So we're just to give you an example of where we can replace something that you already have. So if you're using something like our traditional WAFs and WAPs, we can definitely replace all of those things. If you have or contemplating about the API security solution, which is solving one use case, API security use case, maybe it's a good time for you to think about some unified platform that basically can cover apps, APIs, web app security use cases, web API security use cases, as a part of one unified platform. Our approach here is to give you better coverage with one unified platform. So regardless of what assets you have, apps, APIs, regardless of where they are running, multi-cloud, Kubernetes, or maybe private data center, and regardless of the threat you have, bots, API-specific things, or web app security, we can provide the protection to you. Another topic here, and it's especially relative to the WAFs and WAPs, is the false positives. So the fascinating number is that 45% of all the data alerts are the false positives for a lot of companies. That's not how it's supposed to be. This problem is solved already. Come to us and we'll talk about this. So with the WAFs and web security, we can provide the near zero false positives. And you should have, as a part of a subscription, 24/7 SOC team that can help you reduce it even more. So give your teams back the nights and the weekends. This is already a solved problem. So this is also where you can allocate your existing team members for something more important than tuning the false positives. Build unified workflows. Our team mentioned, it's not about yet another dashboard. It's about having your team working together, have everybody, developers, engineers, DevOps, using the same tool, integrate each other, have the unified visibility for the observability metrics and for security metrics. We provide the out-of-the-box integration so that you can better understanding of what's going on here. A few things that I want to mention, the last thing probably, is the prioritization. So when we have not enough resources, we should ruthlessly prioritize. How to do that, it's always a question, but one of the features that were released last year is our API security scoring that can basically score all of the APIs and endpoints that you have. So Timo mentioned this, use it. You can test all of the apps and APIs you have. Choose the most critical ones. Start with them. Give those solutions to the security teams, like the product security teams. Prioritize and make more bounties is your bug bounty programs for the APIs that are having the most risk. So this is the actual way how we can make a meaningful data-driven decision, to prioritize your security efforts. And if you have your own idea of what is the risk for you, what is why this application has more risk, maybe it's because it handles some sensitive data or some specific types of sensitive data. It's in your control. You can basically set up and specify how this risk score will be calculated, and it will be shared across the team. Just to recap here, 3 themes: support the business strategy, manage risk, increase ROI. Happy to unpack any of this. I know like 16 minutes is not enough to talk about the priorities and show a demo. So happy to see all of you on the other webinars. The next would be the how CISA can build an API security program at the end of the month, but also come and show like come to the demo or create a free account. So this is what we are always happy to chat and discuss. And I think we ran out of time, but maybe we can take a few questions if we have something that can be complementary for the whole team. Otherwise, we can just follow up with the answers if there's anything.
Yeah, Stepan, we got a couple on LinkedIn, and the first one comment I'll put out there is again, saw it several times. This webinar has been recorded, and the slides are available. So I posted the link several times in the LinkedIn comments. I'll post it one more time. That if you register, obviously you attended it here, but you will get the slides and recordings afterwards. The next question we got was from Chris Frazier on LinkedIn, and he asked, sorry, maybe I missed it, but what about encryption? And is this product, is it behind a proxy?
We didn't talk about the deployment.
Yep.
What's important here to mention is that we provide, and Tim can probably talk more about that, but we provide like a lot of deployment options.
Yep.
So that any company with any infrastructure can pick and choose.
Tim loves the deployment conversation.
I do
Yeah.
love, I do love drawing a good picture, that's for sure.
Yeah. Do you want to give more details on that?
I mean, the bottom line is we are a proxy, so we can get into details on how and what. Just request a demo and it'll end up in the queue, and we'll get back to you, or we can reach out directly, right, Rick? We know who that is.
Yep, it's right up there.
Yeah, out of band option is also available. So like if it's we always try to make the deployment as frictionless as possible. So like no friction is always better. So you can pick the cloud native proxy versions or sidecar or ingress controller or some other stuff, or just like plug in and analyze the copy of the traffic in the out of band fashion. So it's really depends on your use case. Happy to chat about it.
And then the other question, this is from, and I apologize, Andrew Karnak, I think is how you'd pronounce your last name, Andrew. I apologize. So his question is, what are the algorithms we use to detect scrapers, or maybe more generalized, how do we detect and classify scrapers?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have a machine learning algorithm that sits in the back end. We're looking at different aspects of your traffic as it's coming or as we're seeing the traffic. And then based on those, we give you a representation of what we believe is good or bad. And we actually have 6 features, machine learning features today. I think we're adding 14 this quarter, or up to 14 this quarter, so 8 more. And these are just looking at different aspects of the traffic, user agents, requests, and for those slow account takeovers, right? So the lack of traffic is also a key indicator on whether it's a bot. Having been in retail, you get a lot of account takeovers that are just low and slow, and those are really hard to detect, but we have ways to determine that in our machine learning of what normal traffic is like for 99% of your customers. And then this 1% that's doing something odd looks like a bot, and that's how we'll display it. So we've got 14 features, machine learning features that look over your traffic. And happy to get into that more if you want to go deeper in another setting.
We won't tell everything though.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's always tricky and it's always in motion. So, but yeah, happy to chat more, obviously.
Those are the 2 we got on LinkedIn, and we are past the hour. So once again, we have the links up there. And I'll post it again in the LinkedIn chat feature to sign up, and you can get the recording and slides. And as always, I'm all over the LinkedIn comments as well. So feel free to reach out to any of us directly or request a demo, and we would be happy to show you any and everything. Stefan, Tim, thank you for your time as always, and look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks, you, Tim.
Rick.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Have a great year, everyone.